Meeting will please come to order. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Happy New Year. Good evening. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. Thank you for joining us tonight. We will call the matters in the order in which they appear on the printed agenda. There are copies of the agenda on the table by the door. So you may want to have one so you can follow along to see when your matter will be called. Now, if you plan to address us tonight, we ask you to please come up to the podium, please speak into the microphone, and tell us who you are and where you live, as that may be relevant to the matter at hand. We ask that you speak clearly in the microphone so we can hear you, and because everything you say and everything we say is being recorded. And from those recordings, minutes of the meeting are prepared. These minutes are available at Village Hall in hard copy form, as well as on our website at wilmette.com. Our board meetings are also televised on Local Access Channel 6 and on the Internet. If you look up, you can actually see the cameras in the corners of the room. By televising our meetings, we make it easy for members of the community to follow the proceedings of the Village Board, to see the types of matters that come before us, the questions that we ask, and the policies we create. You can find archive videos of Village Board and other local government meetings at wilmette.com, and I'd like to personally thank all the residents who regularly tune into Channel 6 to follow the workings of their local government. Now, before each meeting, the Board receives a packet of agenda materials, and these materials are also posted on wilmette.com on the Friday before our meeting so that the people, residents, and other interested parties can review the very same materials that the board members received. This week's packet contained 401 pages. We've had an opportunity to review all the information in the agenda packet, so if you do plan to address us tonight, we ask that you tell us the most relevant, most material, the most important points you really want us to focus on. Finally, we are a community of neighbors, and as such, we want our meetings to be as civil and courteous as possible. So, as a courtesy to those around you, please take this time to turn off your phones and other devices. And while we're turning off our phones, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Wolf?
Here.
Trustee Sullivan?
Here.
Trustee Plunkett?
Here.
Trustee Dodd?
Here.
Trustee Kurzman?
Here.
Trustee Pierce? President Belinsky?
Here. That's 6 out of 7, and that is a quorum. Next item on the agenda tonight is item 2, public comment. During public comment, we ask if there's any member of the audience who would like to address the board on a matter which is not on the agenda tonight. Members of the audience may address the board on matters which are on the agenda when the particular matter is called. So is there any member of the audience who would like to address the board on an item which is not on the agenda? May I see a show of hands? Okay, moving on to item 3. Item 3 is the consent agenda. As described on the printed agenda, items which are routine business that are not normally debated by the Village Board are placed on the consent agenda. And all items that begin with the number 3 are on the consent agenda. And tonight, that beginning on page 1 with item 3.1. It's also all of the items on page 2 and the first 3 items on page 3 ending with item 313. Items on the consent agenda are up for approval tonight. If an item is not removed by a member of the audience and is not removed by one of the trustees, the item will be approved and it will be discussed. It will not be discussed, I'm sorry. Before I ask members of the audience and the trustees if there's an item that they'd like to remove from the consent agenda, I'm actually removing an item from the consent agenda. I'm going to remove item 3.5, which is Zoning Board of Appeals Report, case 2018-Z-54 for 611 Forest Avenue. So item 3.5 is off the consent agenda. Now I'll ask members of the audience if there are any other items that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda. Okay, I'll ask the trustees, are there any other items that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, so seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda, again, excluding item 3.5?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan?
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett?
Aye.
Trustee Dodd?
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman?
Aye.
President Belinsky?
Aye, so the motion carries. The consent agenda has been adopted, and if you are here for an item on the consent agenda, it was just approved. And I'll clarify for people who are here tonight, again, all the items beginning with 3 have been approved, and that includes item 3.3, 3.4, 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, and 3.9. So if that was your item, any of those were your items, it's been approved, and there'll be no further discussion of those items or any of the other items on the consent agenda, and I'm not even telling people they're free to leave. They're just leaving. That's great. That's early. and it's a new year, so it's a great time to stop by one of our restaurants before you head home, okay? There's a bunch of them right there. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, which is report of officers. We'll start with our report from our village manager, Mr. Frenzer.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. President. Just 2 brief announcements, 2 reminders for residents. First, tomorrow, January 9th, is the last day for a Christmas tree collection for recycling, for composting. Advanced Disposal will collect Christmas trees for composting tomorrow. Please place your tree at the location of your regular recycling pickup. Residents with alley access should place the trees in the alley to ensure proper collection. Only residents with curbside waste and recycling should place the tree at the curb. The rule of thumb is that the tree goes where the trash goes. The trees must be free of string lights, ornaments, tinsel, garland, and not be in a plastic or fabric bag. Finally, holiday light recycling, as many of us have to dispose of lights that don't work anymore. They cannot be placed in the curbside recycling toters. The lights actually foul and damage the sorting equipment at the recycling center. However, the village does make it easy for you to recycle your old holiday lights. They can be recycled at the Wilmette Public Works facility at 711 Laramie Avenue. The recycling boxes are in the visitors' parking lot, and they're accessible 24/7 and will be there through January 31st. Please remove the lights from packaging and plastic bags. The program accepts all types of strings of lights as well as your extension cords. Any information on this or other items on recycling can be found on our webpage at wilmette.com. That's all.
Thank you. Next up is our Corporation Counsel, Mr. Stein.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
And next item on the agenda is item 5, which is the report of the Liquor Control Commissioner. There's no report tonight. So we'll move on to our standing committee reports. And Trustee Pierce is absent tonight, so I'll ask Trustee Sullivan to take the Land Use Committee report. Oh, sorry. I should have given you a heads up.
We now have one item to discuss, which is item 3.5, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals case number 2018 Z54 611 Forest Avenue, which is regarding a request for a parking space in a required front yard, a 5-foot side yard parking space setback variation, and a variation to modify a non-conforming accessory structure, detached garage, in accordance with the plan submitted and its adoption of ordinance number 2019-03. That is a motion to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. This item came to us with a positive recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals. I pulled it off of consent. This would normally be the time when I would ask whomever pulled it off of consent to explain why they did, and I will do that instead. So I'd like to raise the issue for members of the board. When I don't have an issue with the garage. I don't have an issue with the driveway. Where my issue arose is in that taking out the portion of the driveway creates a parking pad in the front of the house. There's lots of driveways on the blocks. I live on a street with driveways and cars. But when you remove the driveway, there's a positive in that you're taking out impervious surface. The negative is you are now forcing the car that's parked in front of it to be basically right next to the sidewalk. And from my point of view, if we were to do that on every street or every house that has a driveway on Forest, I think that would be a huge negative. So I'm okay with this proposal if the driveway doesn't get removed. And I don't know if that resonates with any of the board members or not. If it doesn't, this could be very short and everybody can say we don't care and we'll just vote. But if it does, I'd like to have a conversation about it. So I'm going to actually, rather than call the applicant up, I'm going to ask the board members if what I'm saying is of any concern to them at all, and if it isn't, we can move on and this doesn't have to be a long discussion, but if it is something we want to talk about, let's talk about it.
Yes.
Trustee Plunkett?
So I think that would be a concern. To me, removing all of that impervious surface is more of a benefit than leaving that parking pad. And I understand that we have a policy against the parking pads and we're not creating a parking pad here, but we also have a policy that if something is existing, even if it's non-conforming, we allow the homeowners to keep that. And basically, if removing part of the driveway does not remove the entire driveway and the curb cut, and so we are not creating that, we are leaving that non-conforming pad in the front yard. Another policy that we have is we encourage off-street alley, going through the alley, so we definitely want to encourage that, and I think that in this case, an exception can be made, or a distinction can be made between this and other instances, and that there is more of a benefit in removing the majority of the driveway than keeping, having a driveway that goes 190 feet, the entire length of the lot, and having basically access from the front and the back.
So and your point's noted. That's the question, right? And I recall we said no to a parking pad that was next to the garage, just expanding the driveway. We told them they had to put it in back because there was that alternative. And I also recall Trustee Dodd and Trustee Kurzman weren't on the board at the time, but the four of us were. You remember the patio / parking pad where it was a side yard setback, and we allowed it to stay in place, but we limited it to one car so that it conformed. So that was your suggestion is you would prefer driveway gone, impervious surface gone, and you're not concerned with the car being forced to be at the sidewalk as opposed to potentially being parked closer to the house and away from the sidewalk.
Well, but I think in this case, because it already exists, I mean, in other cases, they were talking about expanding it to have a parking pad. And in this case, what is there is not being changed. We're only eliminating, not adding.
Okay, fair enough. Trustee Dodd?
So I agree with Trustee Plunkett a little bit here. And I think I've shared this in other meetings, and I know I've shared this quite a bit with staff, is my perspective in general is when we have alley access for homes, then my preference would be when there's alley access to the garages is off the alley. And because that reduces overall impervious surface, and that goes in line with the character of the neighborhood. But in this particular situation, and in many situations, we happen to already have driveways that are already there, and in this situation, it's an existing, curb cut or whatever. And I believe our, regulations, allow them to continue with that curb cut and things like that. So we're kind of torn a little bit, and having him, I believe, having the driveway continue to the back just doesn't ensure that they're still not going to park their car in the front anyways.
Agreed.
And so, in general, yes, we don't want cars parked in the front of people's homes. That's why I feel really strongly around when there is, alley access to some degree, that we have access off from the alley to get to that. But this is one where it's existing, and I agree then with Trustee Plunkett, which is better than to reduce the impervious surface that we can than to, than to have the driveway go all the way up.
So, and this is close to where you live.
It is,
and,
yes.
And there's a lot of driveways, not that dissimilar from my neighborhood where we don't have alleys.
But there's not that,
half a dozen or so blocks, say. And if all of them changed so that your cars were down there, that wouldn't concern you.
So that's why so I would say I happen to live on the 800 block of Forest. On the 800 block of Forest, there's not a single driveway on that whole block.
Right.
There's also not a single driveway on the 900 block. And I believe there's only one on the 700 block. So.
Well, 5 and 6 have.
But 5 and 6
block
happen
had
to
a
have
lot,
more,
and 500
right?
had a lot.
Yeah, and so that's partly why my preference in these particular areas is that there is no driveways.
Right.
That is, because of the impervious surface issues and the character of the neighborhood. But and so I would not be in favor of something like this if it were, it didn't exist and somebody was starting out from scratch.
Okay. Trustee Wolf?
I have a question and a suggestion. I'll make the suggestion first. It seems to me the driveway is existing going all the way back to the garage, which is at the back. If we're concerned about the car being parked right by the sidewalk, what if we had them leave just a little bit more of the driveway so that they could pull the car up a little bit farther so it wouldn't be forced to be right by the sidewalk?
I mean, like 10 feet or 15 feet
yeah,
or something like that?
Something like that.
That's where I was going to come out.
Okay.
Because I think what I don't want to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. We'll discuss this, and then I'll have my question.
Because I agree with both. I mean, I think taking out the driveway, we do remove the impervious surface, which is good, but what we're limiting it to now is this pad in front, which is 21 feet, so that now the majority of the time they pull in on the front today with the driveway, they probably pull a little bit further back so their bumper's not on the sidewalk. Now, just limiting it to this, the bumper's going to be right next to the sidewalk, so I think where you're going, President Belinsky, is you want the car further back, not right on the sidewalk. So that's where I was coming up with Trustee Wolf. Instead of having 21 foot of pad, could it actually go to the, almost what I'm going to say, excuse me, the
Sort of the 40-foot, that 40-foot line, right, yeah.
Yeah, is that a sidewalk going up there?
That's a sidewalk here.
Yeah.
That's a sidewalk. It's
What about?
Because here's the parkway, here's the, so they're here. So I just took it up to the almost the house, and I was,
Yeah.
which I can't, whatever this, it's a bad.
Looks like it's
description.
more 19, it looks like it's to the 40-foot, are you talking to like the 40, the
40-foot
line that's the
setback,
40-foot
yes.
setback line?
Correct.
And I think if we wanted to do that, I would think it could be worked out with engineering staff, what would be a suitable amount to pull it back.
To pull it further off the street away from the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, that would actually, that would go a long way to solving my issue, and sort of, that's a great suggestion from both of you, the sort of split the baby, how about happy medium?
Yeah,
right here?
exactly,
Because you're
exactly.
still removing the vast majority
Yeah,
of
the impervious surface.
the
on
impervious
the
surface along the side of the house.
Yeah.
Side of the house.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've re-engineered the applicant's
Now,
project
can I
here-
ask my question?
Yes.
Okay, my question is, looking at the letter from Dan Manus, basically engineering in, okay, if there wasn't a curb
Which,
cut.
which page is that, Trustee
That
Wolf?
is page, let's see, 136. So, as far as engineering procedure, if there were not a curb cut in existence and a homeowner wanted one, they would apply for one, and in deciding whether to grant them one or not, they look at various things. And in this case, because it is existing, they're saying, yeah, you can keep it. However, they're saying that the permit for this property, the last paragraph, shall include the following additional conditions. At a minimum, the stormwater runoff shall be mitigated by promoting all these things. And I'm wondering what they're proposing along those lines, or if that, again, would be handled with staff.
Mr. Adler or Mr. Friends, or either one on this one?
I did talk to Dan Manus, the village engineer, a little bit about this. I believe that's something that they would work with the applicant. I did ask him, was there a condition placed on getting rid of a portion of the driveway? He said there wasn't a condition placed on removing that portion of the driveway. He said they preferred it because then it really caused the applicant to use the garage off the alley more often. So if you left the driveway going from Forest all the way back, you could access the garage both ways, and they would rather force most of the traffic onto the alley to access the garage than off of Forest. That said, he said there's no condition that's been placed, and the condition that's there is something they'll work with the applicant on at permitting time.
Okay.
And I don't know if the applicant has.
No, I think that sounds great, because if you look at it, the net is all this, a lot of impervious surfaces going away, and they're doing some additional stormwater thing. So I think that's a double plus for the neighborhood.
Well, and from an appearance point of view, if you do take it back a little bit and put a fence up there, it almost looks like the backyard just begins, as opposed to, it doesn't even look like a pad anymore. It looks like it's just natural sort of end in the backyard, and who knows what's behind it kind of thing. you know?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
because I found the pad on the 500 block of Forest. There actually was a car parked in it when I drove by, and I was like, wow, that just, if you had a whole block full of that, I don't think you would like that. So, all right, so let me call the applicant up just discussing with Mr. Adler.
Hello.
So is that something that would be acceptable to you to move so it's not just the little pad, but the driveway would go back a little further?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, we both just don't really use, don't go all the way back because it's so tight. So I think my husband, he would be using the back alley all the time anyway, and I probably would mostly as well. So I don't think we wouldn't double up on that. So it would just be probably one car parking there. I don't see the car close to the sidewalk really anyway. Even as I use it now, I kind of pull up further anyway. There's like a little sidewalk that comes out that I kind of pull up to.
Right.
So I feel like I'm kind of already at the porch, you know what I mean?
Right, but if it doesn't go any further, you can't go that much further.
Right.
Because that's what I was going to ask you
Yeah,
that question.
that-
How far do you, it's an odd question, but how far do you pull in normally? Again, I couldn't tell from this diagram.
Well,
I'm looking
I
at this
pull
one.
in, I pull up basically to the very
that's-
front of the porch.
So that's a sidewalk there that's sort of coming
Yeah,
off the...
correct.
Okay.
And that's like, right where my door opens up, it kind of opens
So
up right
actually,
there.
where the pad stops now, you would be going out on the sidewalk or walking back out to the side. If there was, like, say, snow on the grass, you'd have to be either cutting across the grass to get to the sidewalk.
Yeah, right now when I get out, I'm basically by the sidewalk. Like, so my car, so the problem with if you pull it up too much, I mean, I could, that's all we could do, that's fine. But to pull it all the way up, my door would hit it would just hit the porch.
So is that porch that's the... Is this the porch here?
Maybe could we, John, can we just put up so we look at the same?
Sorry.
So I make sure we're.
If we, do you want it on the computer or do you want it here?
Either way, either way. Oh, John, I stole all your thunder with the slides.
Please, no. Yeah,
Can we zoom on that?
Yeah. Let's,
I think it's the bottom part that we're most focused on, right?
okay. I'm trying to figure out how. There we go.
So I sort of feel like if it goes to the...
John, you might be better off with the...
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah,
there we
that
go.
looks good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is that port, so the sidewalk, where the end of the pad is right now, just past that and above it, that's the sidewalk you were referencing, right? That you sort of walk in front of the house? Not too short, but up, like straight up from here. That's the sidewalk you were talking about?
Yeah. Wait,
s-
I'm trying to think of where
And
this
so maybe
is.
if the pad got extended, beyond the edge of the porch or something, anywhere between the edge of the porch to the front facade of the house?
Yeah,
I mean, that would be I mean, I know the one you're referencing on the 500 block, or the 500 block. I think that's a little bit, ours is closer to the house. I mean,
Okay.
the way that I park now, it's closer to the house than that one is. That's closer, you're right, that's closer to the sidewalk. How we use it now, I'm closer to the house.
Oh, that's an interesting point. So, yeah, that pad might not have been a full 21 feet back. Like, this is 21 feet. That pad was shorter. That was like 15 feet or maybe even less.
what is a car, what's a typical?
18 feet.
18, so.
So
Even if you gave it to 25 or.
Yeah, to 25 feet or something. That's a big, I mean, an extra 4 or 5 feet's a big difference.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, something around that would work, because then you wouldn't be opening your car door against the porch, because the
Right.
front of the car would be out there, the driver's side door could open, and
Right.
I think that would work out.
So if you'd be willing to extend it 4 or 5, whatever feet.
Fine.
I'm fine with it. And we
Okay.
can stop this conversation and vote and say yes and move on. So,
That's fine.
all right, the applicant's there. Any questions? Does it work? So do we need to amend?
Yeah, so if the movement in the second would agree to the amendment, which would be the extension of the driveway or the parking pad by an extra, what do we say, 7 feet? That went from 4 feet
yeah.
to...
I would just take it to 25 feet.
To 25 feet?
So it make it extend it extra.
How about to approximately 25
Yeah,
feet? Can we say
approximately
that?
25,
And then
yes.
engineering and staff can work through
Yeah.
the specifics?
That'll be reflected in the
That's
ordinance.
fine. That would be perfect.
Yeah.
It actually, if you could say to the corner of the porch, because Ms. Corey is saying that's where she pulls up to right now. So you see there's landscaping and then you see the corner of the porch. So it's probably an extra 10 feet. But if we say the corner of the porch, then staff could find out what that dimension is and we could just, they'll cut the driveway at the corner of the porch.
Where's the corner of the porch?
It's-
Right after the.
It's where those plantings end,
There,
or to your
that's
right.
it. Yep, that's
Yeah.
corner of the porch, right?
Well, I'm fine with it.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's landscaping there.
But I just want to say, I like having it closer to the corner of the porch, because if you're driving in, you're not going to know the difference between 4 feet. So if you have it by the corner of the porch, it's going to be your.
I agree.
It's going to
It's-
be
That'll
your.
be your point.
What's that?
That'll be your
Your
point.
stopping point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
otherwise, I think the 4 feet's not going to make enough.
Can we word this such that it's in excess of 21 feet, the exact amount to be agreed upon between staff and
Yes.
and the applicant as
Yeah,
opposed
so it'd
to...
be, yes, the extension would be up to 25 feet to the corner of the porch.
No, it's more, it's going to be more than
No.
25 feet,
So-
probably.
All right, so,
Just the way he said it, I think we're confused.
wait, I said it away.
You said it. I know what you were trying to say. Not up to 25, but
At least
It's between
25.
25 feet to the corner of the porch,
Yes.
as determined by staff.
Yes.
That's what I was getting at.
Mutually agreeable between the staff and the applicant.
So it'd be a minimum of 25 feet, maximum to the corner of the porch, as determined by staff and the applicant.
Does that work?
You accept that amendment?
I accept that amendment.
Second, accept the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. All right, is there any further discussion? All right. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this application? Okay, no further discussion, no audience comment. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the motion. Wait.
Were you going to go around, or?
Oh, I wasn't planning to,
Oh,
but please.
Then I'd just
feel
like
free.
to make one observation. I have limited exposure until recently to alleys, so that certainly is, I'm just being honest about that. But I can say from my experience in West Wilmette, it is the bane of all of our existence that we have driveways that go around to the back. And to see a driveway going all the way to the back of a house when there is an alley, strikes me as that's a concern, and that's why we're trying to problem solve with this. I hadn't contemplated the visual aspect, so you're taking it off the consent agenda was interesting, exercise for me to think it through. I don't object to the discussion, and I'm likely to go along with it. I just want to point out, though, from a policy perspective, we have not given a resident in this situation an economic incentive potentially to consider losing the curb cut and to give all of it back in impermeable surface. I've inferred from the materials that it would be a loss of economic value and otherwise to lose the curb cut. But in theory, if we structure a stormwater utility or some other policy device, that a homeowner in your position would see enough value that you would consider that in having only access in the garage. I just think that we collectively have work to do to keep the incentives going for people to add back permeable surface, and I really like that you did contemplate that in your plans, and I'm not going to disagree with the thought process of my colleagues. I've learned from it, but I just wanted to express that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, anybody else? Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the motion.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan?
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett?
Aye.
Trustee Dodd?
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman?
Aye.
President Blinsky?
Aye. So the motion carries, and the variance has been approved. Back to Trustee Sullivan.
Now, for the Finance Committee, all items were approved on
Oh, well,
consent.
we were still on land use, though. Are we done with land use?
All other items were covered on consent.
So finance, everything's done, too?
There's a
Okay.
consent.
Trustee Dodd, Administration Committee.
No report.
Municipal Services, Trustee Wolf.
All items covered on consent.
Public Safety, Trustee Kurzman.
No report.
Judiciary, Trustee Plunkett.
No report.
And let's see what we have on the agenda here. There are no reports from our special committees. Item 7 is new business, and there's no additional new business, so we'll move on to item 8, which is adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? We stand adjourned at 8 o'clock.
Total info.